West Mich Hill greeting people in that manner, or his parents, for example, then I'm not going to accept this as a poor judgment, or this is just the way an officer reacts. I heard one of the officers say on the radio today, well, oh, he did it to me, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, that's even more appalling to me, for the simple fact that if you think that having this be a part of your culture that extends out into our neighborhood, that can be threatening and offensive to others, is okay, then I'm afraid for the leadership that we have. So again, we don't want to demean and put people down. We want to empower and also call for accountability. I think that there has to be accountability. I do hope that the Office of Professional Standards, also known as Internal Affairs, will take a look at the incident, get feedback from the community, and engage us in whatever process that it will have moving forward to address not just this incident, but also other issues within the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. And I'm glad that all of you are here to help us shape and to form that process.
Their take on this is, this was just one time when he was doing that, when someone was there with a camera. And I believe that we need to bridge that divide and not just hold citizens accountable for what they do, but also the police.
How desensitized we are. And if there's ever been a time that public safety needs to be hypersensitive, this is that time. You know, we're living in that day and age. And it's also a time where citizens need to be hypersensitive to what public safety is going through. We just cannot deal with each other as though there's nothing going on in our nation. We just can't deal with each other outside of the scope of the reality that relationships are strained, that trust has been torn, and that, you know, we need to be working together to constructively rebuild and restore. And I think that this was a very unfortunate event in that it was a step back, in that it made a lot of people who are trying to make productive steps, who are trying to make constructive progress, turn around for a second, or pause for a second, or perhaps even turn back, you know? And I think that for leadership and for individuals who represent our Department of Public Safety to not take that, take all of that into full consideration and pursue this with that consideration in mind, I think that that's somewhat of a validation of just how insincere we've been about making corrective steps, you know? I think that we hold people accountable not just to have good speeches and not just to give good rhetoric, but we have to hold people accountable to practice what they're preaching about and to put those things on display. And I think that, you know, this is one of those times where public safety and other members should step forward. I've said this earlier today, and I'll go on to say it again. This is not, for me, an indictment over the career of this officer, an indictment over how well he did last week or what he failed to do last week. I'm not concerned with that. I think that sometimes we look at issues on too broad of a spectrum, and many times the intentions on broadening the spectrum is to not focus exclusively on the incident itself. And I think that when you look at the narrative that has been shared with us and the image that has been shared with us in an isolated incident, it definitely calls for some form of response. It calls for some form of corrective, restorative, and punitive action. And I'm interested in seeing what that's going to look like. And the lack of that action, the lack of that participation will say to me that I'm not as valuable to public safety as they've led me to believe that I am. The lack of responding, the lack of action will say to me that perhaps they're not as serious about really changing the way people feel in the community if when the community feels so strongly about something like this, they don't respond.
I also want you to invite us and to hold us accountable. So when you have a meeting in your community, at your church, at your neighborhood association, you get us down there. Because I'm listening, and I have the privilege to get one-on-ones with the city manager and the chief on a bi-weekly basis. I'm going to deliver this message, but you keep the rest of us and my colleagues coming into the community to hear you as things arise. So thank you for having this today. Know that I've heard you. Know that my heart hurts, and I'm going to deliver this message.